Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Vetejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let's chant verses number 1, 5 and 20. Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik Tadrishyam Driktumanasam Drishyadhi Vrittaya Sakshi Drigeva Natu Drishyate Nodeti Nastametyesha Navriddhim Yati Nakshayam Swayam Vibhatyatha Anyani Bhasayet Sadhanam Vina Asti Bhati Priyam Rupam Nama Chetyam Shapanchakam Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam Jagat Rupam Tato Dvayam. So we were just learning the meaning of this very important verse. Verse number 20 is the one which is at the very center of this teaching, and one I would recommend that you learn to chant by heart, by memory, not have to look that up. Asti bhati priyam rupam, etc. So what we had seen was that in this entire creation, the entire world, Jagat, the entire cosmos, there is something that binds us all together as a kind of like a common, you can't even use the word glue, but it's a common thread that is there for everything in the whole cosmos. And so from that perspective, there are things that are obviously different, but the more you look into it, you find that there are similarities between things and people that you were overlooking. It's just that we had not thought of it in our daily life. We don't really pay much attention to it, and so on. So, as an example, so each one of us has a certain individuality, and the most obvious individuality is the skin color. And so when you walk down the street, you find that there are people with different skin colors, and they look different from your skin color, so they are different. So this is the issue with the minorities, the African Americans, the Indians, the Pakistanis, and the Asians. They look different from the whites, and so there is a difference between them. But if you figuratively peel off their top layer, what you find is that there are some differences but less differences. So take the blood type below the skin. The blood types are not that different, although there are some differences in the blood type. Oh, and I don't know all the different blood types, but they're all red in color, every one of us. So the question is, what is it that we are talking about and emphasizing? The skin colors are all different, but the blood is very similar. So you can go even further than that. You can say all human beings. Now you can even bring in non-human beings, like birds and cats and dogs. And what you find is that there are obviously differences, but they also have blood. Their blood may be slightly different. I don't know. I have no idea about the differences between human blood and animal blood. But anyway, then you find that our differences now try to see they resolve in the constituents of the body. Going back to the human bodies again, we all have a heart, a beating heart. And we also have kidneys. And we all have pancreas. And we all have veins. So there are commonalities between us that are not obvious to us. So you can say that the functioning of the bodies is kind of like a common thread that is in each one of us. Let's go a step further than that. So this is what is prana. Prana. So prana means life. It's the most visible expression of consciousness. I'm using choosing my words carefully. So the prana and is now a very visible reflection of consciousness. So now there are some dissimilarities between a table and a human being, because the table does not reflect consciousness as well as it does a human being, any living being. So the living being now has life in the form of the ability to process vayu, the air which is imbued with oxygen. It has the ability to extract the oxygen. It has the ability to have a set of bellows that can take in the oxygen and use that oxygen for the functioning of the living being and expel the carbon dioxide. So now we have some differences between plants and human beings, where the plants are actually taking the carbon dioxide and putting oxygen out, but they are still involved in prana. So prana functions in the plant kingdom as well as it functions in the human kingdom. It does not function in the tables and rocks. But now the tables and rocks also have the presence. It may not have the subtle body of the prana and the mind, but it still has the presence of the sthula sharira. So it has the gross body. It looks like a table. I also look like a human being. So there's a certain common between them. So anyway, what I'm saying is I don't want to go any more detail about this. There are obvious differences and less obvious commonalities between everyone. And if we proceed along these lines, and this is presented in a very orderly fashion in the Taittiriya Upanishad. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it talks about Annamaya Kosha, the very outer covering. And then inside the outer covering is the Pranamaya Kosha, the life-giving force. Inside that is the Manomaya Kosha. It is the human mind, the software. So really all living beings have software. Not only do they have the outside hardware, but inside there is a functioning software. So inside the Pranamaya Kosha is the Manomaya Kosha. Inside the Manomaya Kosha is Vigyanamaya Kosha. So Vigyanamaya Kosha means not any mind, but a very definite mind, which is different from, so this is the difference between Manaha and Vijnana. So Gyanam and Vigyanam. So Vijnanam means a very definitenessly I am. The I thought is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And except for the inanimate objects, all animate things have I-ness. This is me. This is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Then we do not stop there. We go to the next level, which is Anandamaya Kosha. And Anandamaya Kosha is a sense of joy and peacefulness. This is true for everyone. Even more common, whether you are an African American, or you are a white, or you are an Indian. So we're looking at proceeding towards commonality, the very single thread that binds together. And so Ananda, a sense of freedom and a sense of joy and a sense of peace, is the next level. And this, by the way, is true for all living beings, not just human beings. And even animals, they just don't want to be disturbed. They want to just have a peace. They don't want to be caught. They want to have a freedom. Even an ant, you try to approach it and it just says, no, don't touch me. I'm on a mission, I'm going to do something. So this is the sense of Ananda. And so Taittiriya Upanishad talks about all these apparent differences, koshas. Then it comes to the final binding thread that threads all of us, which is consciousness. And so one might ask, well, what about the inanimate objects? They don't have consciousness. How can you say that all of them have consciousness? Well, it is like an overall consciousness. So whenever you say the table, you cannot say this is a table unless you have table consciousness. And so the table also has consciousness associated as an object. Maybe not as a subject, but consciousness associated with it. So similarly, for example, even a table in a dream is really a conscious table, because it is not separate from you, the waking consciousness. Anyway, so the point is, the final thing is that the thread that binds us all together, by the thread binding means the very basic common content of everything. Like for example, we saw that in an ocean, you can have a variety of forms, but what really binds them together as a common content is water. So similarly, the very common content of everything in this whole creation is consciousness, awareness. Or in fact, another word for that is knowledge. Knowledge means pure knowledge. Chit Swarupa. Na udeti na astameti esha. Drg Swarupa. We'll go into this connection between Drg and Drsya in a minute, but consciousness is the one that binds it all together. And that is the common thread between all of them. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, as the very human avatara of Ishvara, he says, Mai sarvamidam protam sutre maniganaiva. This is the 7th verse of the, I don't know if it's the 7th verse, it's some verse in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is very precious to me because when I was first listening to Vedanta by Swami Chinmanan, he took this chapter in 1973 in the Lone Mountain College in San Francisco. So this has always stuck with me as a very introduction that I'm so blessed to have listened. Mai sarvamidam protam sutre maniganaiva. So he says the Ishvara, the Lord, is saying that I am protam. Please see that I am the common thread amongst everything. Please see this. Sarvam mai sarvamidam protam sutre maniganaiva. So there he gives an example. So he says, just like you have a necklace of jewels which is held together by a thread which is invisible. So when you look at a necklace, and the necklace which is, one of those different kinds of necklaces, but you can have a necklace where you have these beads. You can even look at this Rudraksha. So here also, this is different because you can see that the I don't know if it is gold thread. It's very precious to me because Swami Dayananji once gave this to me in 1978, and this is his own, and I'm very fortunate because what happened was that Swami Dayananji I had arranged for some talks by him in the local area. This is in 78, yeah, I think close to 78, and we used to live in Los Gatos. My wife and I and the family were living in a town called Los Gatos. And Swamiji had visited us, and he stayed in a hotel close to us. Still there, Los Altos Lodge, it's called. I'm sorry, Los Gatos Lodge. And he stayed in very close to our house. So I would go, and he had an independent room, and then I would go and fetch him and take him to talks and so on. And he would occasionally eat with us. But then, after he left, after the whole thing was over, I got a telephone call from him from Chicago. He had gone to Chicago after visiting us. And he says, Vijay, I left my Rudraksha bead in the bedside table of that room. And can you please see if it is still there? And if you find it, keep it. You know, I made a beeline, got into the car and went to it, pardon me, and talked to the front desk, and I said, you know, there was this Swami who was staying here, and he says, yeah, the room is still not been reoccupied, so here's the key, go look for it. There it was. This Rudraksha bee. I'm so blessed that Swamiji forgot about this, and I am the recipient of it, and I wear this all the time, except when I go to sleep. So here the thread is visible, but suppose you have a necklace which is full of beads next to each other. You don't even see the thread. You don't see the thread. All you see is a beautiful necklace. This is exactly like the creation. In the creation, you see people. You see African Americans, you have Indians, you have Asians, you have whites, you have South Americans, and so on. You don't see the thread which is binding them all together, which is holding them together. There is an order in the whole system. It doesn't look orderly because it looks disorderly, but it isn't. It is orderly. There is in fact an overall order to it. In other words, just like, you know, a necklace also, you have no idea what's holding it together. It's invisible to you. Similarly here also, this is all visible. Now, why am I spending so much time on doing this? In order to explain a way of looking at this verse number 20. Asti bhati priyam nama amsh rupam nama cha amsha panchakam. Asti bhati priyam is the common thread amongst everyone. Asti bhati priyam, that it is known and it is pleasing to someone. The existence and the knowingness of things, it's not just for nothing. It is for ananda. And this is where the interplay of joy and the lack of joy comes in. We will see that later on. But really the very essence of the one which is holding things together, the very content of it, the very basis of everything is Asti Bhati Priyam. This is what is the common thread between all of us. And what are the uncommon threads? Not a thread. What is the uncommon aspect of it? These are the various beads. You have a black bead and a white bead and a yellow bead and a brown bead, all different from each other. But really the very essence of it, holding it together, is the Ananda Satchidananda, or Asti Bhati Priyam. So as number 21 we saw last week was, so now we can quickly revise this number 21. Kha Vayu Agnihi Jalaha Urvihi Shu Deva Tiryang Naradishu Abhinnaha Satchidanandaha Bhidyete Rupanamani. So he says that What is abhinnaha? Abhinnaha means one which is non-differentiated, which is common to everyone. Is in what everything? Kha, Vayu, all the Pancha Mahabhutas, all the basic elements that are made up of all this drishti, and then the elementals, the very the result of the combination, which is three basic ones: Deva, celestials, people that are denizens of heavens; Tiryak means animals, and Nara means human beings. All are differences. Then you can even say here tables and chairs and so on and so forth. Abhinnaha Satchidanandaha. So Satchidananda, which is nothing but Asti Bhati Priyam. Sat, Chit and Anandaha is the common between all of them. This is the thread. And Vidyete Rupanamani. So in name and form, it is all different. And so this is the culmination, this is the revision of the verse number 20 and 21. So a very clear distinction between what is common and what is different. So this was presented. And in this way, as we will see more clearly, this is also the difference between Drik and Drishya. So as we will point out in more detail later on, the Drishya is Nama Anshapan, Rupam Nama Amshapan, is the Rupam and Nama Amsha. It is the Rupa Namani Vidya, is Drishya. Drik is the Satchidananda. Asti Bhati Priyam. So Drik is Asti Bhati Priyam, and Drishya is Rupam and Nama. So at this point, those are different from each other, but it turns out that Rupam and Nama, name and form, are just for discussion purposes. They are non-different from Asti Bhati Priyam. So the reality is really Asti Bhati Priyam. Non-reality is Rupam and Nama. Just like, for example, the difference between a necklace and a bangle and a ring and so on and so forth is their names and functionality and shapes, but they are all made out of gold. Even the necklace looks like the weight of the necklace is the weight of the gold. It all depends on how much of a piece of gold you have. And the look of the necklace is the look of the gold. The quality of the necklace is the quality of the gold. Everything is nothing but the gold, but except for the Nama and Rupa, just the name and form. So this is what the whole Srishti is. And I don't see the unity, I only see diversity. The question is, why don't I see the unity? And in order to see the unity, what should I do? And why should I see the unity? Why can't I just keep things as they are? You can. But please don't complain about problems in your life. If you want to eliminate problems from your life, you need to be aware of the unity behind the diversity. It doesn't mean that you start to embrace a snake that you see in your garden. No, we are both the same. It's not what we're talking about. But while there are differences, to see, my gosh, there are some similarities. We are all creations of the same God. And the sense of peace and harmony that comes from it is just amazing. And so, how do I do that? How do I practically understand the unity in the diversity while I am continuing to transact with people in the necessary differences? So these set of questions, why don't I see it? How do I see it? The unity amongst the diversity. And what is in it there for me if I do it? Why should I expend the extra energy in understanding this? Is now being discussed in verse number 22, which we will now begin today. So, let's chant verse number 22. Upeksha nama rupe dve satchidananda tatparaha samadhim sarvada kuryat hridayevathava bahihi. One more time. Upeksha nama rupe dve satchidananda tatparaha samadhim sarvada kuryat hridayevathava bahihi. Let's look at the word meanings of this verse first, and then we will explain the significance of it. I should have a page marker so that I don't have to spend so much time looking for it. Okay, so verse number 22. So let's just do the word meaning of it. Upeksha. Upeksha means having disregarded, having overlooked. Overlooked and disregarded what? Nama rupe dve. Both the name and form. Upeksha nama rupe dve satchidananda tatparaha. Being engrossed in the Satchidananda, being focused on the Satchidananda. So, Upeksha nama rupe dve Satchidananda tatparaha samadhim sarvada kuryat. May you practice this samadhi. So this word samadhi is going to be a major topic of our discussion going on from now on, as I mentioned before to you. So we would look into meditation, different types of meditation, the yogic meditation, the Vedantic meditation called Nididhyasanam, etc., etc. We will see all of that. This will bring out some concepts like devotion, bhakti, karma, action, and jnanam, which is knowledge. It will bring out certain aspects of them. How are they all related to each other? So, to open up that whole topic, this is a verse which is the door to it. But here it says, Samadhim Sarvada Kuryat. Samadhim Sarvada Kuryat means, may you get into a natural way of being absorbed in looking at Satchidanandaha and not into the Namarupa. This is the method. The method of doing what? Because we saw that right now we are really focused on the diversity. But how do I look at the unity, and why should I look at it, and what does it do for me? So to answer this question, now we begin this section, which starts with Upeksha Nama Rupe Dve Satchidananda Tatparaha Samadhim Sarvada Kuryat. And then he introduces the method of doing samadhi. He starts, there's a lot more detail coming, but he starts by dividing these types of samadhi into two segments. So one is Hridaya, the other one is Bahihi. So Hridaya means a heart. You're in your own inside of yourself, your own thoughts. And so Hridaya means a heart. So Hridaya means in the heart. It's a seventh case, Saptami. So in the heart, or you can do it outside. And so we will see the meaning of inside versus outside later. And there will be more divisions. Each of the inside will also have some segmentations. Outside will also have some segmentations. So now we will be talking about the types of meditations, and in fact we will do it also. So from this point on, having absorbed the basic ideas of what Drg and Drsya are, what the whole Srishti is, and so on, having done that in a very brief fashion, now we will, if you want to call it, practice that in the form of a meditation from now on. But before we do that, let's understand the very process which has been explained here. So let's go into this. Now that the word meanings are clear, let's talk about the importance of this verse and what is being said here. So two things. One we have already pointed out, and what we have already pointed out is that Asti Bhati and Priyam is the Drik, and Namarupa is the Drishya. So look at this, how this text is consistent. So in the very first verse we said, be aware of the Viveka between Drik and Drishya. And then we defined both Drishya and Drik in great detail, in a very brief fashion. Drishya has its own dharma. Drishya means what is seen. And the dharma means the very qualities of the Drishya, as we have already gone through, is that it is changing. It comes and goes. It has a start and doesn't, and has an end. It is unreliable. It is dependent. And the one thing that we have not emphasized is it is full of dukkha. It is a cause of problems. Drishya is the cause of problems. It is full of problems. In fact, our acharyas say that it is not the cause of problems, it is a problem by itself. Drishya means a problem. Not necessarily, but invariably. Sooner or later, it will manifest itself as a problem. So these are the qualities of drishya. The drik on the other side is just the opposite. Because in verse number 5, that's why we, starting with verse number 1, we jumped over to verse number 5, which explains the nature of the drik. And the nature of the drik, yes, here is the one that never starts, no udeti, and never goes, no astameti esha, and never changes. No astame, no udeti, no astamesi esha, no, what is it? I forgot the word that was used. Na vriddhim yati. There's no change to it. And then swayam vibhati. It is not dependent on anything. It is independent. Without any sadhana, without it is self-evident, self-existing. It doesn't need anything. The drishya needs food. But the drik doesn't need any food. It doesn't need any help. So these are the two basic aspects of the reality that we saw from the very beginning. Then after a discussion of each one of them, we came to verse number 22, which says, the entire creation is in fact made out of these two things, which is asti bhati priyam and nama rupa. Adyatrayam brahma rupam. The first three are the nature of Brahman. And the last two are the nature of the world, Jagat. The experiencer and the experienced. So this we had already talked about. Now we have talked about the fact that Asti Bhati Priyam is Drik and Nama Rupa is Drishya. The second thing to know is Brahman is not something other than I. This has to be kept in mind. Brahman is not something other than I. This is an interesting thing. I will, one of our students from India, Hyderabad, Shanti Kumar Chiluka, has sent a very beautiful video of a person explaining, and which I'm going to send it to all of you in the next few days as soon as I have some time. The scientific idea of how things that you observe are never certain. So this is the mithyatvam. Sometimes it acts like a thing, and sometimes it acts like a wave. So this is the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And so this mirrors what we say, that really there is no reality that you see. It appears what it is, but there you look for something, because the reality means it should not change, but it keeps on changing. Drishya keeps on changing. And then it concludes that the observer is independent from it. So even science can figure this out. But here is the thing. It is very different for a science to say there is an unchanging observer than to say that unchanging observer is me. So this is an important thing. When I send you out this, I'm also going to add this note along with it. So it is not enough to say that Brahman asti. So you look at it as a scientific experiment that see how particles sometimes behave as particles, sometimes they behave as waves, and see how uncertain it is, but the observer remains the same. All of that. This looks like a kind of an interesting scientific insight into reality. Right? It looks, and it's also accurate also. We cannot say that this is not true. It is true. But this is where the big issue is. To a scientist, no matter how intelligent the scientists may be, how insightful the scientists are, doesn't matter. I mean, their level of intelligence far exceeds any of ones that I am associated with. They're so sharp, amazing, insightful. But, there's a big but. What is that big but? The scientist, to a scientist, it is just an idle fact. To a Vedantin, it is not an idle fact. So a scientist, Brahman asti, a observer is. To a Vedantin, the observer is me. And we don't stop there. So what if the observer is me? What difference does it make? It makes all the difference. Because if I understand what the implications of Brahman is, it is phenomenal. I can't use words like phenomenal. It is amazing. It is life freedom. It's life freeing. So this is the difference between Brahma asti and Brahma asmi. Means the Brahma is not just ordinary thing, it is me. This is where I find hard to accept for a human being, for any ordinary student. I have to earn that ability to understand, which is the truth, but I don't get it. So that's why I think all these scientific experiments, even though they are true, don't mean anything to the scientist. They look at it and saying, an interesting fact, but they still remain limited and samsari just as they were before. Whereas to a Vedantin, the same fact, when superimposed upon yourself, becomes a door to freedom. Okay, so this is the other thing about the connection between Drg and Drsya and this important verse, which is Asti Bhati Priyam Nama. Okay. So now to follow what we were saying, that how do I, so let's not forget our main objective. Our main objective is, so what? Is it just Asti Bhat? Is this just some interesting information? Like the scientists are pointing out? Or does it mean anything to me? It should mean something to me. I should not just be reading these books just as, you read a novel and you read some political commentary. Just like these days, there's a lot of political commentary on, is possible that the Democrats in the US are doing well, but can the Republican president snatch victory from the jaws of defeat? It's possible. So there's a lot of discussion going on. Is it something like that? You can all discuss it and say, you know, what's happening in November 3 and so on. Or is it something which is very important for my own life, for my own future? What is it? I want to know why. Why should I understand this? So now we begin a exploration as to why I need to understand this unity behind diversity. What does it do for me? So here, this segmentation of the samadhi of hridaye or bahihi is an important hint for me to begin this process. And here Swami Vidyaratmananda ji has done a marvelous job of really articulating this. So wonderful. I was reviewing his notes and I found that he's absolutely right on. So what he says is that what this verse number 22 says, practice an indifference towards names and forms. Samadhim sarvada kuryat means start to practice. If you want to make this whole thing personal and beneficial to you, here's the thing to do. Practice namarupa, my preoccupation with names and forms. Practice the indifference to all these first to yourself. This is the meaning of hridaye. Practice this on yourself. How? Let's look into that. So, I find that I am very preoccupied with who I am, what I look like, what my strong points are, what my weak points are, hiding my weak points, projecting my strong points, sometimes exaggerating, sometimes even lying about it. This is what the Bhagavad Gita in the 13th chapter, the very famous 20 qualities that I must own up. Amanitvam adambhitvam. The very first two ones are amanitvam. So amanitvam means the opposite of manitvam. What is manitvam? I have a sense of I am someone. Everybody wants to say, just believe in yourself. This is who you are. The question is, this belief in who you are, is this realistic or not? And the reasonable contention is, it is not. Why? Because we tend to believe what we want to believe. We have an image about ourselves. Really, it can be both ways. You can have an image. This is I still remember when I was growing up. I have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. And when I was growing up, one time I asked her. I said, her name is Lata Didi. So I said, Didi, tell me, which I had just been introduced to this topic about superiority complex and inferiority complex. And I remember having a conversation with her and asking her, which is better, inferiority complex or superiority complex? And she kind of smiled at me and she said, really both are bad. And she was right. So our image of ourselves is not accurate, but it could be wrong in either direction. Even a sense of, I am no good, people don't like me. This is wrong. You should talk to your mother and say, do you not like me? And your mom will smile and say, what are you talking about? Well, that person doesn't like me. Oh, that's their problem. You're okay. So the inferiority complex is also wrong, but the superiority complex is the one that really bothers everybody. Not bothers, but everyone is beset with that. You have our own image of, this is who I am. And then you are trying to, having a definiteness about who you are, you don't accept it, you don't like it. I need to do something more. Why do you need to do something more? Because I'm not terribly happy yet. I'm still working on it. Okay, I'll work on it. What do you want to do? Well, if I do this and then I do that, and I get that degree, and then I make this much money. Okay, fine, do it. And then after a while you check with him and he says, have you made some more money? Yes, I have made more money, yes. And have you gotten a new degree? Yes, I completed my master's degree in the last 3-4 years. How do you feel about yourself? Well, I'm okay with that, but there's always a but. So the thing is, the point I am making is, this is upeksha nama rupe dve satchidananda tatparaha. That the first thing I should do is be less concerned about who you are in terms of a human being, what your qualities are, what upsets you, what your aspirations are, you're trying to do things differently, all those kinds of things. And so this is the upeksha nama rupe dve. Then what should I do instead? I should now start to pay more attention, and eventually the majority of the attention in discovering my true nature as Satchidananda. So this is what is the meaning of the first line of the verse number 22 is Upeksha nama rupe dve Satchidananda tatparaha samadhim sarvada kuriyat. Hridahi, right now it is hridaye. Bahishcha will do later on. This is just inside of myself. And what it really means is that may you learn to shift your attention from your design to your content. The content is more valuable. It is more lasting. It is more independent. And it is more joyful. The design may be joyful in the short term, but designs can change, fashions can change, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable can change. But who you are, which has yet not been fully discovered by you, and once you do, it always has been unchanging. Na astameti esha na udeti. But you just didn't know that. So invest in changing your focus on asti bhati priyam rather than nama rupa. So this is really the process of becoming both emotionally and spiritually more mature. So for example, Swami Viditatmananda also pointed this out, very good example, that if you're a child, you're not expected to really say it doesn't matter what I am. Because the child is still growing. And it says, am I good? Am I doing okay? You have to give ABCs and all of those kinds of things to see how you're doing, and then you're given extra encouragement by the parents. Oh, you're doing okay, don't worry about it. But I did very badly on the test. Oh, those tests are not important. Just study a little bit better, and luck has to be involved with it, and you are doing fine, don't worry about it. Just keep on going. So all these encouragements have to be given. For how long? For how long? And I would end this class with just a very brief analogy that really speaking, Nama Rupa are like crutches. Are like crutches. If you have injured supposing you fell down and you sprained your ankle, and you are unable to walk by yourself, then you are now given some crutches. And you use the crutches to negotiate walking from one end of the room to the other, to go to the bathroom, to take your clothes off, to put the clothes on. You need the crutches. And so childhood and immaturity, if you may, are like crutches that you need. Absolutely. But isn't the aim of using crutches is to make sure that one day you don't need it? Because I think what happens is that people get so attached to the crutches that after they are using a crutch for 6 months, somebody says, hey, why are you using those old crutches? There are better ones available. Better ones available? Yeah, there's some, oh my God, there's some new innovation. Go to Amazon. Okay, go to Amazon and say, new types of crutches. Amazon, of course, is so beautiful. It will say, okay, here's this new one for $129.99. And by the way, other people have been shopping for even better ones. You want to show you that? It shows you a picture, and there's one for $299.99. Looks very cushiony and so on. I want to get that. I think I can afford it, and I can afford it. I need it. You keep on going for better and better crutches. You're so involved. Instead, the physical therapy that you should have been doing so that you don't need crutches, you don't do the physical therapy because you're so enamored by the new crutches. So this is exactly what our situation is. Nama Rupe Dve means Upeksha Nama Rupe Dve. Please start to get prepared not to use your internal emotional aids. You are okay even without it. No, I'm not okay. I know you say you're not okay, but you are. Can I please explain this to you? Please look at it this way. And so this is the instruction given, that in fact at one point in time you will not need anything. You are okay the way you are. Why? Because Asti Bhati Priyam, which is which is Brahma Rupam, Satchidananda Brahma Rupam, is you, none other than you. This I don't quite understand. Fine, okay, understand it. Doesn't mean that you have to do anything. But anyway, this is how the text proceeds, very beautifully, one step at a time. A very excellent text. That this is where Shravanam morphs into Mananam, then morphs now into Nididhyasanam, Samadhi, which we will dwell on in the next few classes. Okay, so with that I close today's class, and we will continue in the next class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So you have any, let me see if you have any questions. Nice of you, good to have you all attend the class. And I don't see any questions per se. I'll wait for another minute or two. I do see that the number of people following the class has dropped quite a bit, and I don't know what the reason for that is. Either your attention is changed or something, or you find these not to be as useful as you thought. There is a core set of people like yourself that are always here, and I appreciate it, but I do want to really inquire into. I'm going to send an email to other people to see why there's been a drop-off. It could have been a number of reasons. They're busy or whatever, but and it normally does happen. It's nothing new. People start with a certain enthusiasm, and then for whatever reason it drops off. So, but I will inquire into it. So with that, thank you for attending, and we will hopefully see you next week. Om.